In a room full of voices fighting to be heard, the most important one made no sound at all. A billionaire's plan hung in the balance. A community's future trembled, and every eye held confusion. Then a deaf woman raised her hands, and silence fell, a silence only a 10-year-old boy dared to break. The air inside the Midtown Arts Center was thick, not with the Oklahoma heat, but with a simmering, restless tension. This was no polished corporate event. It was a gathering of raw nerve endings, homeowners fearing displacement, small business owners on the brink, all staring at the man who held the keys to their future, Graham Ellington. The billionaire stood prepared to speak, his charts and projections ready. But before a single data point could be shown, a gentle touch on his elbow stopped him cold. His mother, Marjorie, stepped forward. She offered the room a small, firm smile. Then her hands began to move. The polite, expectant atmosphere shattered into 1,000 uncomfortable pieces. Her signs were elegant, forceful, a fluent language of sharp angles and flowing gestures. Confusion swept through the rows like a cold draft. Polite smiles froze and melted away. People glanced at each other, then at their laps, unaware but at the woman speaking the truth they couldn't comprehend. You could feel the collective wince, the silent plea for someone to fix this. Graham cleared his throat. "She's thanking you for coming," he translated. But Marjorie's hand came down flat on the tabletop, a silent thunderclap. Stop. She was not a message to be relayed. She was the messenger. She had studied every proposal, every plea sent to her son's office. She knew the statistics of desperation better than anyone here. And she would be heard. Yet the room retreated. Chairs squeaked in retreat. Phone screens glowed beneath tables, artificial light a shield against the unfamiliar. A man near the front muttered, "Didn't they plan for this?" The words weren't cruel, but they were a knife. Graham felt them twist. He hadn't planned for this. He'd assumed his presence would be enough. He'd assumed wrong. Marjorie continued, her expression a landscape of determination. She was brilliant, observant, resilient. She had navigated a hearing world for decades. And now, in this crucial moment, she was being treated as a problem to be solved. Graham's jaw ached from a smile he didn't feel. He tried again to intervene, and she caught his wrist. Her eyes held his, soft yet unyielding. She hadn't brought him to be her voice. She'd brought him to build something. But she would lay the foundation herself. "This is awkward," someone whispered, the words slithering through the quiet. Awkward. Was that all this was? A social misstep? Graham saw the truth. This was a wall. A wall of fear, of the unknown, of lazy indifference. And his mother was on the other side, building a bridge with her hands, while everyone watched the tools instead of the blueprint. The pressure in the room became a physical weight. Graham had faced hostile boards and vicious media, but this quiet, crumbling disconnect was worse. He leaned toward her. "They don't understand," he murmured. Her fingers flew, a sharp, silent rebuttal. "I prepared. I have the right." "You do," he whispered back. "But they need." She cut him off with a look, no compromise. A woman raised a hand, pity in her eyes. Is she saying something important? Should we wait? The question was a well-meaning dismissal. An older man in a cap spoke louder. "We came for straight talk. You should have been ready for this." The shame was acid in Graham's throat. They were right. He had failed her. He had served her up to their polite judgment. But Marjorie Ellington was not a woman who waited for rescue. She saw the wall, and she changed her tactics. She slowed her signs, exaggerated key gestures, pointed to her notes. She was fighting, adapting, refusing to be silenced by their inertia. Graham felt a fierce, painful pride bloom in his chest. Yet the wall stood. People squinted, tilted their heads, guessing at hieroglyphics. The connection wouldn't come. The meeting was slipping into a silent, hopeless abyss. Then, movement. A shift in the back, not an official. Not a leader. A boy stood up. He was small, swimming in a faded blue t-shirt. He couldn't have been more than 10. He emerged from behind the refreshment table where his mother worked, her hand darting out to grab his arm, her whispered plea lost in the thick air. He pulled away gently, with a purpose that belied his size. All eyes turned to him, a new kind of confusion replacing the old. A few adults exchanged amused, weary glances. A child, now? The boy walked forward, his sneakers whispering on the polished floor. He didn't stop until he was beside Marjorie, looking up at her as if they had a pre-arranged meeting. The billion-dollar plans, the community's angst, all of it paused for this slight figure. "What's your name, buddy?" Graham asked, his voice strangely hollow. "Yalin," the boy said, but his eyes never left Marjorie's hands. He added, almost to her, "I can help." A soft, disbelieving laugh came from the crowd. "Help? How?" Yalin pointed to his own chest. "I know what she's saying." If the room was quiet before, it was tomb silent now. A woman's pen clattered to the floor. Graham's breath caught. "You understand sign language?" Yalin nodded. "My cousin can't hear. I learned to talk with him." His voice was a thin reed, but it didn't break. Marjorie studied him, her stern expression softening into something open, curious. Slowly she raised her hands and began to sign again, at a natural, steady pace. She was testing him, trusting him instantly in a way she trusted few. Yalin watched, his brow furrowed in deep focus. Then he turned to the room. His voice, when it came, was clear as a bell. "She says, 'Thank you for your patience. I want to talk about protecting the families who built this place.'" The effect was instantaneous. It wasn't just the words. It was the dam breaking. A collective exhale swept through the crowd. The invisible wall cracked. Someone in the back murmured, "Yes, that's it." Marjorie signed again, her movements gaining fluidity, emotion. Yalin translated. "She says she's read all the reports, and she's worried the people who made this neighborhood a home won't be able to stay in it. That's what I've been saying." A voice called out, not in anger, but in relief. The translation continued, a lifeline thrown across the void. Yalin didn't just parrot words. He carried their music. When Marjorie made a pointed comment about developers seeing spreadsheets instead of streets, Yalin's tone grew edged. When she signed something wry about Graham's childhood, a small smile touched Yalin's lips as he shared it. A real, genuine laugh rippled through the room. The tension didn't just ease. It transformed. A hand went up. Can we ask her questions?" Yalin looked to Marjorie. She smiled and nodded. The energy in the room had utterly inverted. The woman who'd clutched her notepad in frustration now leaned forward, pen poised, hungry for every word. Yalin became the conduit, his small frame the channel for a powerful, bottled-up voice. He wasn't intimidated. He was necessary. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to LostBlack for more dark and emotional stories. But this was more than just clear communication. Something deeper was passing between the woman and the boy, something that began to pull at the roots of every person watching. The conversation moved from property taxes to pain, from investments to isolation. Marjorie's signs became more personal, her face a map of remembered slights. Yalin translated, his young voice taking on a heavier tone. "She says, she knows some people here think she shouldn't be leading this talk. She can tell when people look at her like she doesn't fit." A ripple of shame moved through the crowd. People glanced down. The truth, voiced so plainly, was a mirror. A woman stammered, "That's not what we meant." Yalin translated that back. Marjorie nodded, her hands moving with a weary grace. Yalin listened, then said softly, "She says she understands, but she also says, sometimes people don't mean harm and still cause hurt. She's used to it. But she wishes she weren't." The honesty was a weight, pressing down on every heart. Graham watched, his pride now laced with a profound grief. This was his mother's daily reality, laid bare by a child. Then a man in the back, his earlier irritation gone, asked the real question. Ask her what she thinks we should do, us, the people who live here. Marjorie lifted her hands, and as she began to sign, the entire room, every single soul, leaned forward. They were no longer just listening. They were finally ready to hear. And what they heard next would change everything. Marjorie's hands moved not with the sharpness of protest, but with the measured rhythm of hard-won wisdom. Yalin watched, letting her finish a long flowing sequence before he spoke. When he did, his young voice held a gravity that stilled the room. She says the first thing you have to do is stop believing you're fighting alone. He paused, ensuring the words landed. Neighborhoods survive when people move together, not apart. A woman near the aisle removed her glasses, wiping her eyes quickly. Nods spread like a wave. Marjorie continued. Yalin translated. She says don't wait for the eviction notice to find your voice. You deserve to know what's happening to your home while you can still save it. Yes, someone whispered, the word a prayer. Then Marjorie paused. Her fierce expression softened, her shoulders dropping a fraction. What came next was slower, more deliberate. Jalen's own composure wavered for a second. He took a shallow breath before speaking. She says she knows what it feels like to be invisible. To spend years speaking and being treated like your voice is a ghost. The room froze. No coughs, no shifting. Just the awful, beautiful weight of shared recognition. She says she doesn't want anyone in this room to ever feel that way. Not because of money, or power, or what they can or can't do. Graham felt the words pierce a place deeper than guilt. This was her soul, offered through the vessel of a child. The man who had complained earlier stood again, his voice thick. Ask her, what do we do when the letters come? The ones that say, get out? Marjorie didn't hesitate. Her answer was already in her hands. She says you form a coalition, not a protest group. A plan. Meet weekly. Share every letter, every rumor, every legal tip. Support each other before the decision is made for you. Jalen's voice grew stronger, echoing her conviction. She says she'll help. Graham will help. But she needs all your voices to rise at once. The murmur that followed was the sound of a key turning in a lock. Ideas sparked. People turned to neighbors, not with suspicion, but with alliance in their eyes. Then, a new voice, young and trembling. A teenage girl in a hoodie, a sketchbook in her lap, raised a tentative hand. Can I ask her something? Yalin nodded. The girl's question was a raw, exposed nerve. Can you ask her if she ever got tired of explaining herself to people who just didn't want to listen? The room inhaled as one. Marjorie's gaze settled on the girl with profound recognition. Her reply was gentle. Yalin translated, his voice barely above a whisper. She says yes. Many times, she says she cried too. Because being treated like you don't matter, it leaves marks. He swallowed. But she says she kept going anyway. Why? The girl breathed, her own eyes glistening. Why keep trying? Marjorie signed a short, simple sentence. A small, sad smile touched her lips. Yalin translated, and his voice broke just slightly on the words. She says, because when one person finally sees you, it makes all the other times worth the pain. A soft, choked sob escaped from somewhere in the room. Then another. It was no longer a community meeting. It was a confessional. And at the altar stood a deaf woman and a 10-year-old boy, weaving a spell of profound humanity. But the spell was touching the boy, too. As the emotional temperature peaked, something in Yalin shifted. He wasn't just translating now. He was feeling the echoes of Marjorie's life in his own. After nearly 20 minutes, his steady posture faltered. Not from fatigue, but from resonance. Marjorie noticed instantly. She stopped mid-sign and asked him a gentle question. Yalin shook his head, embarrassed, but translated it for the room anyway. She wants to know if I'm okay. I'm okay, he said quickly. I just didn't know it would feel like this. Feel like what? Graham asked softly. Jalen's eyes darted, like I'm talking for somebody who knows what my cousin goes through. And it hurts. Marjorie signed a reply, her movements tender. Yalin listened, then said, "She says sometimes helping someone else speak wakes up the things you've been silent about yourself." The truth of it hung in the air. Then Marjorie asked him another question. Yalin went very still. He didn't translate. "Yalin?" Graham prompted gently. "What is she saying?" The boy's throat worked. "She's asking me if anyone ever made me feel small. Like I didn't belong." The silence became fragile, a glass sphere holding them all. Yalin looked across the room at his mother, who stood with her hands pressed to her apron, her face a mask of love and dread. He turned back to Marjorie. "I want to answer," he said, his small voice filling the vast space. He told them then, the taunts at school, the kids who called his deaf cousin slow, weird, who said Yalin was weird too, for knowing how to speak with his hands. The times he'd tried to defend his cousin, only to have his own voice drowned out or mocked. "I try," he whispered, the brave translator now just a hurt little boy. "But sometimes they don't listen to me either." The confession was a heartbreak shared by the entire room. This was why he'd stood up. He wasn't just a translator. He was a soldier from the same silent war Marjorie had fought her whole life. Marjorie placed a hand over her heart. Her signs were slow, imbued with a deep, aching empathy. Yalin translated through a sheen of tears. "She says she's sorry. She says people forget words can be walls, or they can be doors." He took a shuddering breath. "She says I'm brave. And she's grateful." The connection between them was now complete, a bridge of shared silence across generations. The man who'd called the situation awkward stood, his own eyes red-rimmed. "Yalin," he said, his voice rough. "Thank you. I'm sorry." The apology wasn't just for the boy. It was for every time any of them had chosen comfort over connection, assumption over effort. The meeting had ended, but the real work had just begun. And the final quiet moments would seal this change, not with a handshake, but with a promise witnessed in silence. The crowd was slow to disperse, lingering in small, earnest clusters. The air, once charged with anxious tension, now hummed with the low, purposeful energy of a plan being born. But Graham's world had narrowed to the three figures at the front: his mother, the boy, and the boy's mother, who approached now with a look of awe and trepidation. She placed a hand on Jalen's shoulder. "You all right, baby?" He nodded, though he seemed dazed, as if waking from a powerful dream. "Yeah, you sure?" This time, his nod held more certainty. "Yeah." Graham stepped close, lowering himself to meet Jalen's eye level. "What you did today," he began, his own voice unsteady, "was incredible. You gave a room full of adults something we'd lost: understanding. Most of us couldn't have done that." Yalin looked down, scuffing his shoe. "I just wanted them to hear her. And they did," Graham said. "Because of you." Marjorie signed, her eyes warm. Yalin smiled faintly as he translated. "She says thank you. And that she's proud of me." His own mother exhaled a shuddering breath, her hand flying to her mouth. She had always known her son's heart. But to see it acknowledged, translated into the world by this formidable woman, made it monumentally real. People filtered past, offering quiet thanks, soft pats on the arm. Even the most skeptical now offered nods of respect, their earlier impatience replaced by a humble gratitude. The man in the plaid shirt returned, rubbing his neck. "Hey, kid. I was the one who said what I said. It was wrong, you and Ms. Marjorie. You taught me something today." Yalin accepted the apology with a quiet dignity that made him seem far older than 10. Graham crouched again. "Listen," he said, his voice for Yalin alone. "You didn't have to stand up. No one expected you to. It took a lot out of you." Yalin shrugged. "She needed someone." "That's true," Graham agreed. "But I think you needed something too." He gestured between the boy and Marjorie. "You needed someone to see you. Not just the kid who knows signs, but the one who carries the weight of it. And you found her. Yalan glanced at Marjorie. She smiled, touched her fingers to her chest and signed. Jalen's whisper was almost lost in the room's murmur. She says she's glad she met me. You showed everyone what real courage is, Graham continued. It's not about being the loudest in the room. It's about being the one who steps into the quietest, most uncomfortable space and turns on a light. Yalan absorbed this, the words settling into his bones. His mother spoke to Graham, her voice thick. I didn't know he had this in him. He's always stood up for his cousin, but this. We rarely expect greatness from children, Graham said, looking at Yalan. But sometimes they're just waiting for a moment big enough to hold it. Yalan looked up, a sudden worry in his eyes. Is your mom okay? Did I do it right? Graham let out a soft emotional laugh. Yalan, you didn't just do it right. You did it perfectly. Marjorie gently took Jalen's hand. She signed the final deliberate message to him, her expression solemn. Yalan listened, then translated, his voice gaining strength. She says she hopes I never let anyone make me feel small again, ever. The sentence hung in the air, a blessing and a command. Yalan blinked rapidly, the words etching themselves onto his heart. His mother pulled him into a tight embrace, and for a moment, the noisy room fell away, leaving a silent circle of profound understanding between them. Graham stood, surveying the changed space. Today didn't go as planned, he said. It went somewhere much more important. Yalan grinned, a flash of his childhood returning. Maybe your mom should lead all your meetings. Marjorie signed instantly. Jalen laughed as he translated. She says she agrees. The shared laughter was healing, a release of all the pent-up strain. But as the last attendees finally drifted out, Graham asked Yalan and his mother to stay. The empty room felt sacred now, charged with the ghosts of the connection that had just been forged. I've sat through hundreds of meetings, Graham began, his voice echoing slightly. They usually end with people talking past each other, feeling more alone than when they came in. Today didn't, and it wasn't because of my money or my plans. He looked directly at Yalan. It was because of you. You didn't just translate words, you translated a person. You showed a room that being heard is a right, not a privilege. And you did it before anyone even thought to ask. Yalan shuffled, the praise making him shy again. Marjorie signed, Yalan translated, his cheeks pink. She says she didn't feel alone. Not after I stood up. That's who he is, his mother said softly, her hand on his back. Always has been. Graham nodded. You know the most powerful force in this room today? Yalan shook his head. Your willingness. Your decision to help when it was hard and confusing, and nobody else moved. He crouched one last time, a billionaire level with a 10-year-old hero. Keep doing that, Yalan. Keep showing up. Keep using your voice, your hands, your heart, even when it feels small. It never is. Marjorie stepped close. She signed a final slow sequence, pouring everything into it. Yalan watched, his eyes wide. He took a steadying breath and translated, his voice clear and strong in the empty hall. She says, people like us, we aren't always heard. But when we speak anyway, when we help anyway, that's how we change the world. His mother wept silent tears of pride. Graham felt the truth of it resonate in the hollows of his own chest. One of the last men at the door called out, "Thank you, kid. You made today matter." Yalan gave a shy wave. Marjorie signed a private farewell to him. Jalen's face broke into a radiant smile as he translated for himself. She says she hopes I remember today for a long time. He paused, then added just for her, I will. I know I will. Graham placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. I hope we all do. Yalan nodded. Marjorie gathered her things. Jalen's mother took his hand, and they walked toward the exit, a simple woman and the extraordinary son who had quietly rewritten the afternoon. Graham watched them go, the lesson etching itself into him. that all the influence and wealth in the world are worthless next to the transformative power of one person seeing another. The smallest voice, when it speaks with courage, can silence the largest room. At the door, Yalin paused. He turned back, not to Graham, but to Marjorie. He didn't wave. Instead, he raised his small hand and signed, "Thank you." Marjorie smiled, the expression radiant. She touched her fingers to her lips, then extended her hand toward him, the sign for love sent across the distance. Then the door closed softly behind them. In the end, this story was never about a meeting. It was about the spaces between us, the silent gaps we're too afraid to cross, and the brave souls who build bridges we never saw coming. It's a reminder that the most profound changes often begin not with a shout, but with a gesture, not with a speech, but with the courage to truly listen. If this journey into the quiet corners of the human heart moved you, please subscribe to LostBlack. We delve into the darkness not to stay there, but to find the fragile, beautiful lights that only glow in the deep. Thank you for listening.